Hello, everybody. This is the point in the stream in the beginning where I have no idea if you guys can hear me, see me, or any of that. So if you guys can, please let me know. Hello, Andre. Can you see this, hear this? Everything's good. Picture coming through, audio coming through. Let me know. I should open up this chat on the side. Awesome. All right, we got the chat open on the side. Let me adjust a bunch of things in the UI. Actually, let me just quickly post that we're live. Gotta move this out of the way. Let me also play something in the background. Oh yeah, I gotta turn this off quit so you guys don't hear my Discord sounds. Camera. Hello. We have another person. How's it going? Ratius? I'm sorry, I don't know. I hope I didn't butcher your name. I'm just setting things up off screen just to make sure that Unreal Engine's working good. Just closing everything else. Let's see what else I can close. It's one of those things where I know I'm going to be populating so many trees and whatnot. I need like every single resource that I can. Sorry guys, just quickly posting this as well. Probably I've never streamed. Well, I did stream a few months back, but I'm planning on doing this more frequently. So hopefully once I get my setup done, I just moved into a new place as well, so I don't have a lot of my stuff set up. And doing this will hopefully get me into the habit of posting every other day. That's my plan, to do it around this time. It's hard to find a particular time slot when I can do it and it works out for most people. But hopefully, there we go. All right. Let's play some background music. I found this Spotify playlist that I hope is good. If it's too loud, please let me know. Yes, we do have elevator music. All right, let me know, Andre, if it's too loud or not. Like if you can hear me over the music as well. Just playing something in the background for now, but eventually, hopefully, the longer I do it, the more I'll have a curated playlist to play. Alright, so let's fly around this scene and hope Unreal doesn't crash because I'm streaming. Hey, Tropical. Thank you for coming from Twitter. I can up the music? Really? Let me know if it's... like, if you can't hear me, I'm gonna increase it a tiny bit. It's very upbeat for now. I was looking for, like, ambient drone, sci-fi, just background music. So if anybody knows any specific place I can listen to that is also stream friendly, that would be great. But up here that you can see on my viewport, we have the jungle sci-fi biome from Fab. The creator of this is KK Designs. Highly recommend his YouTube channel, and his products make some really top-notch stuff. You can see it's got its little wind animation in there as well, which is pretty cool. And then all of them have a tiny bit of movement. Obviously the big trees don't, but you can see these guys do. So got a good variety of assets. I have some more assets from the project itself. I'm currently, the reason why I'm doing this also to showcase, on top of showcasing the assets that are in this pack, is also to load them into the memory, which is something nice with Unreal Engine. When you should, if you get close like that, it loads all the highest textures and models, and then it's always there in the memory. So it's a nice way to do this now while you're in an empty level, instead of doing in your final level where there's a higher chance that you might crash because you just loaded the asset for the first time. So yeah, let's just see what we have to play around with. Some really nice plants. It's hard to, that's something that I noticed. It's hard to make plants that are alien looking. Like, you can make creepy stuff like that, more carnivorous plants, but this is something that I was thinking too, like, how would you imagine just plant life on another planet? Because we're so used to, like, the idea of leaves and trunks. It's like no matter what you do, like, you always end up with the same kind of a design. But hopefully the characters in our story are also bipedal humanoid type creatures. So while it is technically alien, at the end of the day, you could say that it is close enough to Earth, I guess. So we got that. We got some of these hanging branches and vines. And then some slightly bigger, deciduous almost trees. We got these nice big swirls, which look really nice. Like, basically, I think the way to make things look alien is to find trees that won't grow. Like, even though they look like trees, they don't grow like trees, which is something to make it look like it's alien. And then we got these rock assets, which they're good, but I'll probably stick with, like, some of the nanite, I'm sorry, not nanite, Quixel stuff as well from the Megascans. Let me also open up a preview here in the corner just to make sure what I'm displaying is correct. All right. Everybody good? I'm going to continue. So what else? Yeah, that's pretty much this pack. It looks kind of simple, but you can really make a lot of things out of it. Let me open up the Fab page for this so you guys can see what it looks like. Again, highly recommend checking this guy out. KK Designs. For some reason, the Fab plugin always takes forever to open, or sometimes it'll just error out like this. I just always go back to the doing it inside of either the Google or opening another browser. All right, let's look up KK Designs Jungle Sci-Fi Fab. This one. Let me open it up. So you can see you can make like pretty large landscapes, even though the set of assets that you have are not that big. Through material variation and obviously the scale and size differences, you can really populate something to make it take up a much larger area. Even though the number of assets are not that many, like you can create really big landscapes. So that's cool. And it's just that. We do have some of these pre-made assemblies as well. Let's take a look at that. So currently I just opened up the overview level. Let's try opening up the other levels. Example level. It's opening up in the background. What's the time where you guys are? And whereabouts are you guys in the world? I know Andre's in Brazil. While it's opening in the background, let's take a look. At this trailer. Texas. Nice. Brazil, 11:49. So 1 hour ahead. I think Texas is is it in the same EST or is it an hour ahead or an hour back? All right, the level opened up. Let's take a look. Wow. So obviously, technically, I could just take this and get a base to start this off of, but two things. One, it'll obviously match the other looks if someone else was to do it for their environment. But the other thing is also the fact that this might be too large to begin with. The good thing with creating environments for specific cinematics is that when you have a camera, CST, I see tropical. Yeah, like when you try to build environments from the camera's perspective, more or less, like if you know that the camera is gonna hover within this general area, it's easier to populate the area much more densely, knowing that you don't have to worry about things that are outside the camera's frustum. But even this one, you can see it's pretty large. Well, for the fact that we're only going to be doing like one overshot, so establishing shot that will go over like that, then there'll be a close-up shot from far away outside of the forest looking in to the forest. So it'll be kind of like a long lens shot that'll be similar to that, obviously better than this. I'm just giving an example where you'll see the forest from a distance, like a clearing, and then after that, I think that's pretty much it. Then the other shots happen in a more grassy clearing kind of open area, but obviously not to take from this, but it's good to see how the creators themselves build things. So this one's obviously done through PCG, which is Unreal's new way of setting things up with all right, good night. Unreal's way of setting up procedural geometry. So if you pick up on some of these spline points, for example, you can adjust them to spawn new meshes in real time and adjust the overall area of influence. But the one thing is, obviously you have to connect the PCG to it. So whenever these guys make these kind of assets, sometimes they disconnect the PCG itself so that it's not something that lags in the level. So which is something also you should keep in mind. If you're done creating the things that you are with your PCG, you should probably disengage them. I probably also don't have PCG, I believe, enabled. Let's see. Or do I? Maybe I do. So you have to enable it in your thing. So we have all of them enabled. That's good. PCG biome, PCG sample, and then the framework as well. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see. Floating rock PCGs. Can create some really nice sci-fi structures with PCG, so it's not just limited to things that are on the ground. You can also create them by having them stack like this. So that's pretty good too. We got some space moon stuff in the background. Let's see right there. Let's get close to it. See, so it's just a sky color with a translucent. That's actually pretty smart. Instead of having an actual geometry, it's better to just plug in the opacity map inside the actual specular, so you only get the reflection and you don't get the rest of the dark areas coming through, which is good because when you look it against the sky in real life, you would only see the bright areas, not the dark ones. That's actually pretty smart. And then we got planet B, planet A. Where's that? Over there. Same thing. It's see-through. And then we got the blueprints further down here for the river. I believe this should be... Let's see if it's... Yeah, it's also spline based. So hopefully that means if we adjust, things adjust with it. That's pretty cool. Obviously the indentation that they've done in the landscape won't adjust with it, but something to keep in mind if your landscape has like naturally occurring lower areas, then something like this would be useful. Otherwise you might have to create a more detailed blueprint. But cool, so we have some good stuff in here. Let's see. I see. So what this is doing basically is using the jungle PCG to set up the entire area, and then using exclusion zones, which is what these white lines are, that wherever they go, the jungle gets excluded essentially. But I don't think it's hooked up on the back end. But it's good to know. It's good to have these kind of things in your content browser. So let's jump into the level that we are going to be working with, which is an empty level from the Spring Landscape pack, or Spring Landscape product on Fab from a company called Vertex Interactive, I believe, which is, again, a really good company that makes pretty high quality assets. And I got rid of some of the forest and whatnot that I already had in the level. So this cube here represents the point of action where the camera is going to be lingering around. There's going to be a character here where all the action goes down. So as you can see, it's a pretty massive landscape. It's the same one actually that I used in my Luminar short film, which if you guys haven't, you can hop on over to my YouTube channel and take a look. It's a 5-minute short cinematic that I did as part of the Kit Bash challenge. So I used this existing spring landscape for that. And the good thing, which I find with Unreal Engine, it's almost like virtual scouting, where you could really go around and try and find things at very specific locations, like real life uh, location scouting. So that's what I did for that one. The breakdown for that is also up on my YouTube channel. If you haven't taken a look, it would be pretty cool to see. I'm planning on posting a much larger version of the breakdown so that you guys have access to see it, like the whole process, not just what I did in 3 minutes, because that I feel like was a bit too short. But that's the idea with these streams. Hopefully I have a way of creating some kind of a time lapse where I'm actually building the place, because that's another thing where I run out of like space to record these sprints, essentially, of like 3-4 hours of like non-stop work that I do. So having them on a YouTube time lapse is a good way of just making sure that we have some kind of backup to then create like breakdowns from if need be. So with that said, let's get started. Let me also show you guys the other meshes that we have when it comes to the funky trees. So if I open up my environment, go to dark forest. So I'm just gonna drag these in here just to show you guys some of them. And so in order to also get them to get processed with nanite and the texture. So these are some of the dark forest assets. Might be good for further away shots. Oh, it's actually pretty detailed. A little low poly up there, but yeah, good for far away stuff. And also every single piece that we drag in obviously has to then get converted to nanite as well, which I'm not sure if these are, yeah, they don't have nanite on. So let's take a look what else we got. More tall trees, some combinations of trees, small baby ones, and then finally these guys. So this is another pack. So that's all of them, which is the dark forest pack. So gonna get rid of these guys. And then get rid of you and you. Let's look at the other pack that is available for us to grab, which is evil trees. So in this one, we have really detailed, super spiky boys. The spikes might be a bit too low res, but yeah, again, for far away shots would be good. And it has a base, which is kind of cool with all these mini spikes coming out. Let's just bring these in, get them loaded and processed. Wow, really detailed. Wow, yeah, stuff like that I think really makes it more alien-like, because you'll never see trees do that. This one is also pretty cool. Very bottle-like. I'm just bringing them in to just see what we're playing with. And then 2 more. And then we're done with this pack as well. So even just with these that I've dragged through, you can see how quickly like your visibility drops through them. So hopefully with these big ones, we don't have to add too many. But even if we do, hopefully Nanite will take care of that. But that's pretty much it. These are all of them. The evil trees. Let's get rid of them. And then these are probably the really... So these are a bunch of them that are stacked up on top of each other. I just dragged and dropped all of them. But these are more singular versions, I believe. And then these are more like individual thin ones, just little baby versions, and maybe even branches that you can have them come down from the other trees if need be. Cool. Let's get rid of those. And then we have some ground-based cover, which is kind of cool. Yeah, we're gonna have a good time building with all of these assets. And then this one. And that one. Cool. So let's get rid of all of these. Let's see. One last pack, I believe, that we have. And these are, well, they're smaller in size, but in terms of their actual size, they're supposed to be pretty large. I think they got imported at the wrong scale, which is why they're tiny next to the cube. So this is why something to keep in mind anytime you're building any kind of environment, it's always good to have reference scale, because it's very easy to get lost in the fact how big something is. So I always recommend having some kind of mannequin, the default Unreal mannequin inside of your project. And that makes sure that anytime you're bringing in any asset, you can immediately tell if it's the right size or not. Because when you're working with like big landscapes like that, it's very easy to get lost into the overall size of things. So what I'm going to do is quickly sort through on my skeletal mesh and load that up. Skeletal mesh, mannequin, and then drag and drop that in here, and you can see immediately how small the tree is. But that's okay, we can scale it up, but that's there for future reference. Let's go back to these tree assets, load those in. As you can see, they're preparing shaders every time you drag a new asset in, so this is why it's good to do this exercise before you start working on your environment, to load in memory and also know what you're working with. The scale reference is a good tip. I lose a sense of scale with sculpt. Yeah, 100%. I haven't even worked with landscapes as much. I usually work with either landscapes I find or things that I create quickly. But yeah, I haven't spent as much time. I should really spend more time trying to learn the technical aspects of the engine as well. My work usually involves, even at my studio where I work, it's usually more creative stuff with the engine, which then makes me a little bit good with the creative stuff, but not that good at all with like technical stuff. But let's see what else we have. So these are really nice shapes, but again, as you can see, they're supposed to be pretty large, so we'll scale them up eventually. Well, this one is intense. Cool. Really, really nice ones. texture again might need a little bit of help, but if we're far enough away, it should be good. And then the last one. So that's pretty much all the assets that we have that we're gonna play with. Maybe I'll get some Quixel ones if need be for the grassy area, which is where the cube is where the action will happen. So that this whole area will be grass, and then the tree line will be like further back there. So that's the goal. Cool. I also have some corals from an underwater scene that I grabbed that actually works really well with this kind of alien stuff. So I highly recommend if anybody wants to get creative making alien stuff, especially fauna and not fauna, flora. You could use a lot of the coral stuff, which is, I mean, come on, like seabed in general is very alien-like. All right. So let me open up some of the references so you guys have an idea what we're working with here. So these are some images that were provided as part of the mood of what we're creating. So obviously they're not like super alienish enough. It's just for the mood and the lighting and the vibe of it. So you can always imagine this, but with like alien trees essentially. Let me close that. And yeah, so more of the spiky stuff as you can see. But most of them have one thing in common, which is the fog and the overall hazy vibe that it's going for. So it's a good thing to always keep in mind before you start any kind of project. No matter how seasoned of an artist you are, always have references of some kind, because it helps you really be like, okay, well, my haze is not really that colored, or the depth really needs to fall off at this rate. Stuff that is hard to imagine, but easy to just hallucinate when you're working without a reference, and you might just be like, oh, it's good enough, but then you might realize, oh, like for example in this shot, like you could just be okay with the natural z depth exponential fog that might come with Unreal Engine, but you might realize that to make the dark silhouette of this stand out a little bit more, you might want to increase the brightness of the background higher than what the house is at, which is going to make the house stand in contrast with it. So having fog cards that you can add in the back will make the background brighter than the foreground. So creating that kind of contrast. Same thing with these trees in the front, not lighting them up, but instead keeping them dark so they stand out as a silhouette. But the biggest image was this one, Brimstone, the Demon Within. Kudos to the super talented concept artist that put this together. But the idea is to create this kind of very stormy, moody, foggy, hazy alien landscape. You can see very like fungal growth everywhere and bits and pieces of water, and then just tree roots going all over the place. So I'll keep that on a different screen here in the background so that I know what I'm working with. Just open that up in this corner and keep it open full screen in here, just to have that as a guide board. So it's a good way to see what we will get to eventually, one thing at a time. So the very first thing I would do right after knowing, well, loading all the assets in memory and having a workable level, and then having the reference, the next step would be to set up levels. Now this is something that is very, very easily, like, people skip out on because they might think, well, it's not that important. And I've seen plenty of people just work off of this persistent level right here. You just start building your entire level. But it's not a good thing for two reasons. One, obviously memory management. So everything you're working on is living inside of your total scene, is like it's living inside of your VRAM on your GPU. So what you can do is when you have different levels, it allows you to break them off, add and remove certain parts of the scenes. So if you're like, well, I have my scene has a metahuman, my scene has lighting, my scene has foliage, crazy nanite geometry. If each one of them is in a different level, if your camera is not looking at all of them at a given time, you can just turn them off or even remove them from your stack of levels. And as a result of that, you can load things much faster, render them actually. Because in my case with the Luminara thing, when I get into the extended breakdown, you'll see there's so many sub levels, and I had to do that because without it, I will literally not be able to render. Like, it will look good in the viewport, and that's something people get easily fooled by. They look at a level and they think, well, everything looks good here in the viewport, so we'll be good when we render. But they forget the fact that when they're rendering, they're usually going to be cranking up those settings, and that leads to the fact that things won't render at like 1080 or even 4K. So viewport is not the final result. Visually it kind of is, but the final result usually has a bit more quality to it, whether it's like increasing lumen quality, increasing the depth of field quality, increasing groom quality, increasing reflections, everything. So it's something to keep in mind that levels help you separate that out. And the other thing is also that you can iterate through things really fast if things are separated out in levels. So if there's an entire chunk of area where there's a certain kind of lighting, a certain kind of forest in that, and you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling it, instead of going down and turning off every single actor, you can just turn the whole level off, turn the other one, like an alternate version, and be like, oh, this one looks better. And then that way you can work much faster. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to drag my content browser here as well inside your content. So in Unreal Engine in general, just so you know, another quick tip is if you want to organize your things quickly and you're trying to open up things and get inside of them, like open up each folder, or you're trying to close each folder because you went in too many folders and it's like messy, holding down shift when you click on arrows will collapse everything under. Or if you shift click it again, it will open up every single sub. Hey Rui, how's it going? So every time, yeah, so if you shift click, you can open and collapse folders much faster in Unreal Engine. So this works for any kind of drop down anywhere. So even in here, sometimes what I do is I'm in an outliner and there's way too many things populated and all the folders are open. I just come at the very top and shift click the whole thing and all the folders close themselves automatically. So pretty useful if you're just working with Unreal Engine and trying to do this at a faster speed. So what I would do is go inside the content and then create a new folder. Let's call it levels. And the other thing I do is I add this to favorites. So what happens is down here on the left, now you have the levels added. So next time you want to get into this obviously is like a parent level, so you can just open that anyways. But a lot of times you might be like multiple levels in, and it's a lot of work to go in and find something. So adding them to favorites is usually good. I usually have a levels and a cinematics folder that are like ready to go whenever I'm working. So in this one, we're gonna start adding the sub levels. So let's call this L forest ext L forest. Actually, everything is forest, so let's not do forest. So when naming levels, the way I try to group them is also LGT maybe for lighting, and then exterior, so that you can find. Yeah, so I also have perforce in the back through which this project is working, but for now I've kept it off. I'll probably enable it at the very end when I'm done with the project. But so we have the lighting level, and all you have to do is then drag and drop into the sub level. Now, anytime you drag any level in, that will become the main selected level. So something to keep in mind is also the fact that a lot of times you might forget that you're in this level, and you might just start adding cube and a tree and a plant and whatnot, but they're all getting added to this one, the one that's blue colored. So every time you do some kind of a task where you're adding new things or moving them around or duplicating, always try to make sure that you're in the correct level. Otherwise, you're going to have to move all the assets. So in our case, the lighting level is here. And then if you have a bunch of things, because usually when you're working with geometry, you might have like a ton of geometry nodes. Ton of geometry levels, ton of lighting levels. It might get a little bit busy in this level editor as well. So what you can do is also create folders in here, which is good because you can just name them then. And this is just for aesthetic purposes, just to group them correctly. So what I do is create lighting, a geometry, make sure geometry is above, and then move the lighting in here. Then we have geometry, and let's add one for just the landscape. So we're gonna call this L underscore geo underscore landscape. Save that, and I'm saving all of these off screen, so all the process is happening off screen, in case you might wonder why I'm waiting for stuff here now and then. And then drag this level in here, and you can start adding things to this level. So if you quickly want to see what each asset, what level it belongs to, there's two ways of doing that. One, in the outliner here on the left, you can see the level that something is added to. So this one, all of these are in the overview level, which is the master level that I've opened. And then you can also check them here in the bottom left, where it says selected actor is in the overview level. But if I add this cube to, let's say, the lighting, and say move actors to selected levels, now when I select this, it says it's in overview, but when I select the cube, it says it's in LGTEXT. So another quick way of checking what is in what level. And then the other thing, there was another thing that I wanted to mention. All right, the level group. So anytime you're trying to render, something to keep in mind, there's this little blue like dot next to each level. Anything that has that dot will simply not render. It's loaded as a blueprint, but not into the actual memory, so to speak. Like, it's still present in your viewport, but when you go and run the game, or render in our case with cinematics, it will not actually load it. So you can see if you go to change streaming method down here, it's set to blueprint. You have to click this to always loaded, and then that level will be loaded into the VRAM when you're going to render. Otherwise, it'll just be present here in your scene. But if I was to, let's say, render this whole thing right now, move everything from the overview level and add it to these two levels, and then try to render, it'll just render black. So something to keep in mind. So let's move things right now. So we'll select the landscape, double click the landscape level, and then move selected actors to level. Anytime you're moving massive objects, it will take a while, because it has to not only move the objects, but change all the redirectors on the back end in Unreal Engine to say that, hey, now this object lives in this level, not on that level. So that's something that takes time. Sometimes might even crash. It's what it's doing right now. I don't have control on it. So let's just wait till the entire 64 square kilometers of landscape moves into the other level. But the goal is to make sure that your main level, your persistent level up here, has nothing in it. So you see on the left here, it says overview on all of these. That's the main level's name, overview. I have to make sure that all of this belongs in something else that is not the main level, basically. So let's just give it a second while it's doing its thing. Until then, if anyone has any questions or concerns, let me know. All right. It's still processing. Hope the stream is going on. You guys there? If someone's there, let me know. There has been, if you watch my previous stream, by the way, just fun things while this is loading in the background. I have the last entire hour of the stream on mute because I didn't even realize there weren't people, because it was like watching was pretty late in the night, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. or something. And yeah, it was just, yay, awesome. People still here. So an entire hour of me just giving away tips and tricks. Yeah, just do this, do that, and showing all of it. But all of that is just muted towards the end. So sorry if I make any mistakes like that on this stream. I'm pretty new to all of this still. But yeah. Let me increase the stream music a little. If it gets too loud, let me know. There we go, finally. Let's, sure. Let's just enable P4V in the back instead of forcing it to be writable. So for those that aren't aware, P4V or Perforce is a software that allows you to work with multiple people. Okay, it's asking for a password, which I don't have saved. Give me a second. So Perforce is a software that allows you to create shareable stuff. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm opening things in the other tab. All right. Let me just quickly grab the password. Copy and paste. Okay. So while it's loading in the back, so Perforce is a software that's used to share, basically create a server that most people can work from. So they can connect to it, they can download the files, you can upload the files, but it's a bit complicated. It's not as straightforward. So you do need someone who can actually set that server up for you. I believe there is a free version which allows you to connect only a limited number of people, but if you're a very short team, it's actually pretty useful. But yes, it has a very steep learning curve. Even now, I'm not comfortable with it, even though we use it at work and for this project. But something to keep in mind if you guys are looking for ways to work with multiple artists and you're trying to find any kind of solution where you don't have to like transfer files like Google Drive and all of that. Perforce is a good way, but yeah, like I said, takes a while to learn it. So I'm just gonna let this run in the background, and then we can say connect to revision control, Perforce. Yes. Okay, it's connecting to revision control. And it just runs in the back now and then makes sure that everything is synced up. Just gonna close it. That's okay. All right, so now when we turn this off, you can see our entire thing turns off, which is great. So that's just the landscape. I'm also gonna assign these background meshes, which are just static meshes, to also this level. And that will make sure that all of the things that are related to the landscape itself are part of that. Then we will start dividing each area of the geometry into more sub levels, so that we have one that is just the nearby area geometry, maybe next to the forest geometry, and so on and so forth. So let's move all of these to this wall, turn them off, we're good. Turn them back on. Come on. Sorry for the lag. There we go. So we got all of those good to go. So just to make sure everything else, so we have the hunter coordinates. This is where the hunter's supposed to be, the other character in this cinematic. So let that be in the overview, that's fine. This coordinate is fine. We got the landscape. Let's add the meshes in the landscape so we have everything in one folder as well. And then we got some blueprints that we'll delete for now. And let's coordinate, let's add this one in here. We got the BP forest spline doing nothing, so delete. Low vegetation, delete. Rectangle light, delete. What's this? These two rock pieces. Let's delete them for now. So we're down to the lowest possible thing. PCG world actor sometimes stays and it doesn't delete no matter what. I did have PCG in the level that I had to get rid of, but this just got stuck behind. So we'll just keep it for now. If we do use PCG at some point, it will just auto connect to that in here. So we'll just let it be. Then large tundra rock is somewhere over there. Delete that as well. Instance foliage actor, delete. And then the last thing is the camera. So let's make a level for the camera as well. So I'm gonna call it L underscore level. No, L underscore cam. We only need that descriptor because there's only gonna be one. Drag that in here. So we got our cameras as well. And then add this camera to that by right clicking, move selected actors to level. And now everything is good. So let's jump into our camera next, because that's the next step when world building. So to jump in, let's pick in here from here. This is our camera. Something to keep in mind whenever you are in the camera, this is something that took me a while to understand with Unreal Engine. It's like how much of the world you would see. Sometimes as you start moving this around and like changing it, it might actually adjust based on your actual viewport size, which is not good, because with the camera, like, you really want to know how much of the frame itself you're gonna see. So sometimes switching this to cinematic viewport and then picking the camera helps, because the cinematic viewport makes sure that you only see what's in the view, not the fact that if you were to scale it, that it would change what's inside. So now that we're in here, let's look at some of the settings that I usually go for with cameras. So what I'm going to do is open up the film back. What I like to pick is, and this is just personally me, it doesn't matter, you can pick whichever one you like. Setting this to 2376 by 1365, which is pretty like general for this kind of setup, just 16 by 9. And then what you need to do is inside of the lens setting, change this to 2, which is going to the squeeze factor to 2, which makes the lens anamorphic. But then you have to make sure that you multiply the sensor's height by 2. So you can do multiply by 2 and then double up your lens to what it is now. So if it was at 30, now 60 is the new 30 essentially. and it is not letting me do that. So let's delete this actor. Let's just make a new actor. New Cine Camera. Make sure it's in the correct level. Possess. There we go. Let's do the same thing. So 16:9 digital film. We got all of that. Squeeze factor of 2. So that will make the height lesser and the width more. And then to counter that, you have to multiply this by 2. Then you'll get back to the same framing, but the lens is still different. So you still have to multiply your focal length by 2 to get back to the original focal length. So even though we're at 70, now you're at an anamorphic 35. I don't know why the math is like that, but it is. So now you'll get back to the same view and the same lens framing that you had before you made the switch to anamorphic. But now everything is anamorphic. So if you were to change the focus, you can see the bokeh is like stretched vertically. So might be a good way of quickly creating anamorphic in Unreal Engine to give it a little bit of that cinematic feel, but only if obviously your project demands it. So you can see just by that quick change and with the depth of field, it automatically, even with the simple cube, starts making things look cinematic with the depth of field in there. So that is the thing that I do with my camera. And obviously you can go in and change. I usually like to set it to 100, which is basically, remember, half of this. So even though I put in 100, it's actually 50 millimeter lens. So all that is good. Let's change the focus back to further away. So reset. And now the next thing that I do is alter dynamic sky, because you do want to have some kind of a lighting to begin with. So you could first populate your forest over here and then do it that way, or you could do it just now to get into kind of the mood that you're looking for. So in our case, as you remember from the screenshot that we saw before, it's supposed to be somewhere around this vibe. So we're going to make it a little bit moodier. Let's make sure to save before we start. Let's make sure we're still streaming. Okay. All right. So looking up at the sky. So one thing you can obviously see right there, the clouds are cutting through the geometry. It's because the cloud level is a little low and the mountains are really tall, so it ends up clipping through. Yeah, awesome. I feel like that anamorphic thing was something even I didn't know before Tropical, and it took me a while. I was like, why is the camera not matching? Because I knew the squeeze factor led to anamorphic, but then it just changed the whole picture entirely. So then just trial and error through the different settings, I was like, how do I get back to what it was while keeping? I feel like they should just have a toggle, honestly, with the new Unreal builds. Like if you set the squeeze factor, if you like, it should just be a checkbox saying anamorphic, and when you do on the back end, it does all the math for you while your numbers visually to you stay the same. Because right now it's so weird. Someone might be like looking at this and be like, see the cube, for example, they'd be like, well, that's not 100mm lens. That, and it's not. It's actually 50 millimeters, but on an anamorphic. But yeah. So let's fix this cloud stuff. So we'll go into an alter dynamic sky. So you can see they have a bunch of options for clouds, and each one has a descriptor. Everything in Ultra Dynamic Sky. If you don't know, by the way, Ultra Dynamic Sky, it's a product plugin from this guy called Everett Gunther, I believe. Really talented guy. This plugin is literally one of those. Yeah, that makes sense, especially since Unreal has more. Yeah, exactly. I feel like it needs to be a little bit more film friendly. So yeah, so this guy Everett Gunther made this product. I highly recommend it to anyone who's like, hey, I'm starting Unreal Engine. I'm going to buy one thing. What should I buy? You don't have to. You could just do all of these things manually in the free version of Unreal Engine. But to save yourself a little bit of time and headache of setting things up and why this is not working, why that's not working, I feel like, hey, Connor, good to see familiar faces. Curse at the same time? Why is that? Why is it a curse? I've had pretty good experiences with it, honestly, but then I haven't pushed it to a point where I've seen some of your work. I feel like you've pushed it, so you guys probably know the ins and outs to it. Um, to me, I feel like his Discord is really useful. It's one of those things where I message and within a day or two, and he's got a really big like database of people to help out. Like the number of people that know Ultra Dynamic Sky or have bought it, and to have to troubleshoot all of them for $60 of a product, I feel like it's pretty impressive. Because every single time I had a question where I was like, how do I do that? I have no idea. And then he'll, like, within a day, he'll be like, just do that and they'll fix it. And it actually solves the problem. So, um, when volumetrics don't work on render, little techy stuff, I love it. Those so quick, useful, and do. Yeah, exactly. I feel like even for the game side, like, because for us, like, film people, I feel like Ultra Dynamic Sky is not even that complex in terms of what we use it for. Like trying to imagine like setting this up with a game on the back end where like your game logic has to trigger certain things with the Ultra Dynamic Sky blueprint, because they also have ultra dynamic weather for those that don't know. So like a player can walk into an area and it starts raining, then they step somewhere else and it becomes snow. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's very, very, very complicated on the back end. But again, I highly recommend to people. There is a couple of other variants, I believe. Connor, remind me the name of the other one, Sky something, or it's just as famous, I believe, after Ultra Dynamic Sky. I forget the name of it. Something, something to do with Sky. I'm just gonna make my camera a little bit brighter. It's the brightest it can go. I should probably get a light. Um, material integrations rule. Sky Creator. That's it. Yeah, that guy also has a lot of crazy plugins. I think Space Creator, Sky Creator. I used one of them. I think I have one when it was free. I basically hoard assets. I'm like a professional asset hoarder. It's like I'll see things on, because just for again people that might not know, Unreal and Epic puts out free assets every 2 weeks on the Fab Marketplace, and I see things in there where I'm like, I'm probably never gonna use a children stylized cute animal kitten pack, but I'm like, add to cart, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't have to. It's like there should be a penalty at this point where you can only hoard like 1,000 assets and then your asset library is filled up. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just keep adding random things. So it sometimes helps out. A lot of times for Luminar stuff as well. I believe I used the medieval ROG pack, but I'm grabbing it anyway. Yeah, exactly. And it has a lot of really cool medieval clothing that I used. It was pretty cool. All the assets. It's called a vault for a reason. Yeah. Yeah. But did they actually fix the vault? I haven't opened up the Epic ever since they made Fab. I haven't opened the Epic Games Unreal library vault thing. But man, I wish they add folders and customizing, because I have so many assets that I've hoarded that I have to sort through when trying to find something. I'm like, I need this kind of a character or this kind of environment. And you could obviously, yeah, you can search it and you can find it that way, or you can use one of those pre-made tags where you can pick like environment, broad category environment. But I'm like, there's like a bunch of thing that pops up and I don't want to do that. I have like through our studio, we have reached out to Unreal Engine with this. I've reached out through other places where I've known people and I've asked them, and it's like, I don't know why they don't just let us make folders. Like, just let us make folders. I can have a section that says game related stuff, like some game logic things that I picked up or something that I don't have to open up and look into if I'm not, looking for that. Yeah, adding to project from the vault is the same. Yeah. So pick by category if you're lucky enough the creator tagged it right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, let's get back into it. So volumetric clouds, static clouds. So there's a bunch of clouds that you can pick. Each one has a ton of detail. And again, Ultra Dynamic Sky has its own set of, if you go to the actual asset on your content browser, you can see that it has its own README file as well that you can run, like right click and run it. And then you can just type and ask like volume, like this kind of stuff. I mean, for $60 worth of plugin, it's crazy that he even made all this. So I usually start here when I can't do anything. I go in, read it. You can click on things and try to troubleshoot it. But that's one way to quickly see what each setting does. So I usually keep it to volumetric. But I mean, if you don't want to because you can't run it, you can change that. Project mode is something that's useful. You can set it to cinematic, which will make the clouds a little bit better in terms of visual look. And feature, obviously you want to keep it to desktop because you're doing cinematics. I believe they might have that option right here. So the volumetric cloud rendering mode. So technically they're still clouds and they're still going through geometry because they're 3D. If you set this to background only clouds, they will only show up behind things, which, as you can see, like again, everything is explained in the tooltips. But if you set it to full cinematic quality, it disables the volumetric target render entirely with no temporal upsampling artifacts. Very demanding, not useful for real-time graphics. Sometimes I do this. Sometimes when the thing that you just watched, if you make them truly 3D, they would go over things, but you don't want that. So he's added that option where you can just keep it in the background. Or keep them in the foreground depending on your use case. So for Luminara, like I like to look at the clouds, but I didn't want them to go over the mountains and I didn't want to change the height of the clouds and all that. So you can just keep it to background only. So technically this object might be in front of the mountain, but it will just render behind if that's the case. So in our case, let's switch through and see if that updates. So right there, that fixes it, but now it renders everything on top. This is everything on bottom, full cinematic quality. I think, let's see if it clips. Yep, it's still clipping. So now we might have no other option but to raise the altitude. So it goes a little bit above. But sometimes switching to one or the other modes might help out in your use case. So with the mood that we saw, so the clouds are kind of in the same place. You do want to push let's open up the image here on the side. You don't want to have this kind of really bright highlights like blown out sky whenever you add crazy clouds. So let's try to add the overall coverage to something higher so it becomes cloudier. And it's also good to have like a shadow kind of a viewpoint where you can constantly see the shadow of the object, because you don't want to make it too cloudy to a point where the sun gets obscured entirely. I also like to do this thing, which is select the camera, put it in and pin it. So now I can watch both the viewports while not being so locked in at that angle and at that lens. So let's go back to Ultra Dynamic Sky. It's still a bit too sunny, so I'm going to increase the coverage a tiny bit. Now, the other thing that I always turn off by default when I'm working with Ultra Dynamic Sky is the movement, because I want my clouds to be in particular places. There was a shot in the Luminara thing that I made where the camera's looking up at this guy who has a sword and he's gonna cut this girl up. And the camera really looks at the clouds, like at the sky, very prominently. And I wanted to make sure that the background frame was clear and they didn't have any like breakup in the frame because of clouds. But when I originally filmed it, as in when I was like filmed it as in setting up the shot, it looked great. And I was like, oh, perfect. Because the camera was just like looking up doing this basically. So I was like, oh, it's an empty patch of sky. It's perfect. But I didn't realize that the clouds were set to just auto move by themselves. So by the time I was actually rendering, I saw clouds in there. I was like, wait, where did they come from? Then I realized it was on. So what you can do is come down here and turn the clouds speed off. So right here, cloud speed 0, and they'll go back to their seed 0, basically evolution 0. That's why they went back in time essentially. So now they won't move at all, and now it's easier to customize them. So let's say if you really want a patch of open sky, like the sun to peek through like an open patch of sky in between the clouds, you could just evolve the noise. So then go to cloud phase and then just find until you get something like this. So you might be pretty lucky where you might have like really cloudy sky in your backside, but then get to have an open area like this. This might work out if it works out in your case, but sometimes you also want to custom paint clouds, which is what I did for, there's a valley shot in Luminara where it's like you're setting up this beautiful large Scottish valley. For that, I really wanted like pockets of sunlight, which I tried to do it through the Cloud Painter, which is another utility that comes with in here, volumetric cloud painter. With ultra dynamic sky, I mean it's a hit or miss. It's actually really useful and pretty good how it was made, but what it does is it creates this kind of a thing, like a new interface, and essentially projects your entire scene from a top-down perspective. And so it's creating that in the background. So right here, basically you have your entire level on a top-down orthographic view, and you can see obviously right here. So this viewport is still free for you to go anywhere. So you could just quickly fly back to the cube. So let's just pick Manny and fly back to him. So while we have him and we can look around here, at the same time we can find where our, oh, I guess the two are linked. Oh, you can unlink it right here. So as you're moving this, that moves. But if you unlock this, now you can separate the two viewports. I personally do it because I want to keep my camera in this kind of location. You could just pin this camera too if you wanted to see it that way. But essentially what you're doing is you're telling it wherever I'm going to paint with red, it's going to be completely sunny, so no clouds at all. Wherever I'm painting with green, it's going to be slightly cloudy, so the opacity of the cloud is not hard enough for the sunlight to not get completely blocked, so you still get a little bit of sunlight. And wherever it's blue is completely opaque. So that's the gist of it. And then you just start painting. I'm not going to, because then you have to save, and it tries to load that particular cloud every time you open up. But that's pretty much it. Erase just erases it, whatever work you did, and sets it back to the default. So it doesn't erase the cloud, it erases your paint strokes essentially. And that's pretty much it. Strength, fall off, size, spacing, angles, just brush related stuff. So you could create some really moody skies. I personally recommend doing that because if you're going for a certain look, like in this case, we're not sky focused, we're more ground focused, so it's fine. But if you were to do something very specific, like, let me open this up. Give me a second. Videos. Let's open that up and mute it. So this particular scene, right here, so I really wanted this look, so I only achieved it through the volumetric cloud painter. So there is a giant circle of clouds that then very sharply drops off. and that creates, so imagine if like this map here is essentially what you're seeing here. I would like erase all the clouds from past this point, so there'll be nothing there. As a result, you see the sky being brighter. Obviously I graded that a little bit to make the contrast higher, to make it stand against the darkness here, to give it like that last hope kind of thing, meaning you're in the belly of the beast kind of a feeling. But this is something that you can achieve with the cloud painter, so just something to keep in mind. But I try to get sunlight to poke through and illuminate certain areas like that, or even back there I have certain patches of sunlight. There's one up there, but it didn't through this method, so I just put in some spotlights to really highlight the fact that they're on this last hill where all hope comes to its final stop. And same thing with this entire side, just to have like this entire side is sunlit and our characters are standing there for the final time, and then deep down there is like the final boss essentially. Anyways, so that is that. So in this case, like I said, we're more ground focused, so there's no particular need to worry about that. So with that said, let's increase the coverage a tiny bit more. Coverage is up here at the very top. So you can see how the lighting also changes. Everything becomes a bit too moody, which is good. Maybe open up a little bit of holes. Something like that. Yeah, where the sky now becomes like really bright and overexposed. And then other than that, let's go all the way down to our exponential fog. So again, all of these sections lead to very specific things that you can tweak. In our case, we're going to go here to the fog itself. And then, okay, I'm just going to change the song. It's a bit repetitive. So in here, you can see we have the fog. You can check the exponential fog, which will process. So give it a second. So we'll slowly start getting into that foggy, moody vibe. It's perfect music for that. Sorry, it's just preparing the shaders. Once it is done, we can start tweaking the fog up here. Now, the thing with the volumetric fog is it is good, but obviously it's very all over the place, everywhere kind of thing. When you're trying to do stuff like this here, you really want to art direct where that happens. So exponential fog is good just as a very light pass instead of making it as dense as I've made here. You can make that density through fog cards. So it's done processing. All right. The main use for this would be to just get the fog density increased, but then not to a point where it hides the mountains, just a tiny bit. And then change the fall off. So this is the height fall off. So if you increase it, it will stick more to the ground, like lower. And if you reduce it, everything becomes uniformly foggy. So I like to keep it somewhere where it's not too intense, and I'll show you why in a second. The reason is because the ultra dynamic sky also comes with 3D volumetric fog materials that are basically, imagine like noise patches, 3D noise patches that are moving through the world. I used it a lot for the Luminara setup, where it's not just about the fog that's there, it's actually about a fog that's translating through the screen. And I didn't even know that this feature was there in Ultra Dynamic Sky until that last project where I was just playing through the settings and I found it. That's the ground fog here. So if you enable it, you will get these pockets of ground fog that goes around. Let's see if it shows up. But until it does, let's actually play with the settings to make it more obvious. So let's see, increase ground fog hardness. Oh yeah, before that you have to, in order to enable this, so this was something that I was talking with Gunter, the creator, because you cannot, so basically there's two types of fogs with Ultra Dynamic Sky that are 3D volumetric fogs, not your traditional exponential fog. So the traditional exponential fog that comes with Unreal Engine is already packed in this blueprint of Ultra Dynamic Sky, which you use that you just saw in the beginning when I was playing with it, which gives it a general fogginess. On top of that, he made another one, which you have to enable first, the render global volumetric material. So this will travel 3D fog volume through your scene, that you can control the noise pattern of, so how big the noise is, how small it is, and that you can travel through your screen. So either it's like static or it's moving through your scene, animating essentially. And under that material, he's made a subsection called ground fog, which is the same thing, but it uses the mesh distance fields, which is Unreal's way of creating proxy geometry for everything you have in your scene, and cuts that out of the noise, meaning anytime the fog touches the ground or something, it's not going to go through things essentially. So it knows that there's an object there essentially using the mesh distance field, but the two are linked. So this is something that I didn't know. So I had to ask Gunther, I'm like, how do I separate the movement of two, or the intensity for that matter? And he said there's no easy way, but he showed a couple of workarounds on how to do it. But that's what this thing is. So first you have to turn on the volumetric fog, and then the render global volumetric material, and then you can increase the intensity, and then also turn on ground fog. So now let's see if we can actually see it, because last time I was doing this I had to really try. So obviously right there instantly you can see I had to bump up the fog noise intensity by a lot, and now you can see this thing traveling, which now starts to give you that 3D fog that's actually moving through the scene, rather than the very first option, which is Unreal's default exponential fog, or the other option, which is something like William Fauche's easy fog, which is a 2D card approach, which looks great visually, but it's on a card. It's never going to travel through your screen. So if your camera is moving, that's why I feel like in the opening of the Luminara thing, when Caden's running to get to the settlement in the very opening parts, it looks believable because I have ground fog traveling as he's running and as the camera's moving, which gives it a sense of realism that I don't think 2D cards would have. 2D cards are great for like cinematic shots where fog is really far back, but this thing is useful when you're going to do things where the camera has to travel. So obviously this is too intense, but this is just to show you guys. So what I do is I start dropping the overall intensity until it is subtle. Now you can see that it exists at a height as well, right? Like it's up here. And then if you wanted to specifically see the ground fog, if we do ground fog hardness, let's make it really hard so the edges are a bit sharp and it's easier to notice it. And then height noise. So this is for the ground fog. Let's make it obvious. That's the height at which the global volumetric and the ground fog separate from each other, essentially. Let's try to make it even more obvious, because you can change the scale for the two. So this one right now it's set to 2000. So if you make it a larger number, like let's say 16,000, it becomes, the shape becomes much more bigger and less detailed, which might be something that you're looking for when you're on the ground. Let's say, where's our Manny? Something like this, where you're trying to do maybe like very ambient Blade Runner-y type fog where it comes and goes. So think of it like it's there and then the whole fog just moves out of the way. So it might be useful for something like that. Or you could do it for, let's say, a smaller scale than this. We don't want to go obviously too small because then it looks wrong. So if I do something like 1000, it becomes too small of a size here. So this is where I was talking with Gunther, where I was like, technically I would want two looks. Like I want my, okay, let me lower my volume again for the music. Like I would want the overall fog that's higher up, that's in the scene, that's traveling. I would want that to be a different noise scale, and to have a control for the ground fog to be a more flat 2D-ish low to the ground, larger scale or smaller, however I want to control that. But he mentioned that he's using the same material on the back end to, like, obviously make all of this a little bit faster to have this running at 60 FPS. But you could go in, unhook that, and then reconnect a copy of that material and make that just ground fog material. That way you'll have separate control, and then you can add more of these sliders. So the same thing that controls the fog noise scale up here for the overall one will also, like, there'll be another one where you can control the ground fog one separately. But for now they're connected, so kind of sad, but something to play around with just to keep in mind. So I wish I could make this fog height line for the separation between the ground fog and the overall one more obvious. Let's see. Fog extinction when it's foggy. Set all extinction to 0 so it doesn't get extinct. And then the speed scale is something, again, that controls the speed of it. This was another question that I had to ask Gunther, because remember how with the cloud movement, you can pause the clouds so that they're in that position when you set the cloud movement speed to 0. But the moment you set it to 0, at that point, they're not moving anymore. So if you do want to move them in the sequencer, what you have to do, and this is something I didn't know, was select the entire ultradynamic sky actor. Like wherever you see these guys, the sun target, moon target, usually you'll say UDS, where the actual icon is. So if we go to the sun and moon icon and press F, and press G right here. So this ultradynamic sky gizmo, essentially, you have to pick that, add that to sequencer, and then translate that actor in order to make it move. And that is what controls the speed of the cloud and the speed of the ground fog. If you don't like the way the ground fog is moving, you want the ground fog to show up at a particular area at a particular time. Like I said, like imagine like a Blade Runner type shot where he's walking and there's this huge cloud, like volumetric fog cloud piece that like travels through while he's walking through. This kind of a setup is better because you can control it and you can direct it. and set the speed to 0. So you could do the same thing with the fog here, where in the material it says the speed scale. You can set that to 0, and then the fog will stop moving. It will just stay where it is, and it's not going to move. But then obviously you can see the pattern, the repetition of the noise scale happening. And that has probably to do with the fact that we made the noise scale too small. You do want to set it back to something like 5,000, where that pattern isn't too obvious. And then reduced the intensity a little bit. But yeah, now if I wanted to move, the way you would do is by moving the whole thing. So as you see, as you can move this, the whole thing moves all together. So that was another question that I asked him, if he could separate this out so you don't have to do this by hand. Because with clouds, you at least have the option of changing the phase, which kind of makes it look like they're moving. Technically, they're not moving, they're evolving. The noise is evolving. It's not traveling. There's a difference where it's like the entire noise pattern, it's either translating like a physical translation, or it's like evolving inside of itself. So when you change the phase of the cloud, you're actually evolving the noise, not translating. So in order to actually move it, then you have to move this UDS actor, as I said. But right now they're all linked. So I was asking him if there was a way if he could separate this out. So how you have a sun target, moon target, there could be an exponential fog locator, ground fog locator, kind of. So basically you can move each one of them. So the clouds are traveling at a separate speed, your fog is traveling at a separate speed, and so on. But obviously it's a very specific request, so he said he'll look into it, but currently there's no request for it, there's no need for it. So that is that. What else? I was really trying to showcase you guys ground fog instead of the global fog. The global fog is nice, but the ground fog really looks well when the grass is in there and you can just see it like traveling through the grass. It really adds to the realism of the overall scene. Let's see if we can try to set the speed back up so it's traveling. Make this a little smaller. Extinction. The amount of extinction added as it does. Oh no, not dusty. We don't care for dusty. When it's foggy. Oh, there we go. This is what I was trying to show to make it more obvious. So it's the extinction itself right here. So if I reset this, there we go. So this ground fog extinction manual, that's the setting that actually shows it clearly where the ground fog is. So if I go back to mannequin and say ground fog height, and I do this, now you can visually see the difference between the two fogs. So down here, whatever's traveling with that really sharp edge, that's the ground fog. And then whatever's up here that doesn't have that edge, that's the render global volumetric material. So that's a quick way to make sure that the two things are separated. The only thing you can control, because they're both the same noise pattern, you can't change the scale of them independent of each other, but you can only change the hardness of it where it shows up. So you can see increasing will allow ground fog to form against distance at steeper angles. So usually you want the ground fog as it's about to approach a cliff or something that is too vertical. You don't want it to like visually go there and then vanish into the cliff, right? That's why it's using the mesh distance fields, which is proxy geometry. And that angle will decide at what point it's gradually fading as it approaches that angle geometry, instead of the fact that if you set that value to the wrong number, it might just look like its entire cloud piece is moving, the ground fog piece is moving, and then it just vanishes into the geometry. So that's what that angle does. And then this is the actual noise itself. So if I tweak it, you can see I can make it more ground hugging. So it's like closer to the ground like that. Scales how much of the 2D noise is used to modulate the ground fog's height value. So there's a 3D noise, obviously. So think of it this way. There's an entire global volumetric material that's covering the entire scene. And there is this bifurcation line that separates the rest of the 3D fog that's up here and then the ground one that's down here. The separation between the two is also controlled by a noise, because you don't want to like separate the two with a straight line like a gradient or like some kind of line, because it will become obvious when you're looking down into the horizon. So there is a 3D noise that is separating the two levels. So this controls the height at which that separates, but how much of the noise is injected into it. So if you set that to 0, the separation between the two is pretty obvious, but as you can see, how much of the 3D noise is used to modulate the ground fog's threshold value. If you increase this, the gap between the two, obviously the height of the fog is very little. If I increase this to 50, so it's a little bit higher, the transition from this fog to that fog will now be controlled by an uneven noise layer instead of just using the, actually the height is here. So if I set this height to, let's say 50, so wherever the hard parts are, like the hard shapes like this, that's all the ground fog. And then as we keep going higher, wow, this number is pretty strong. Let's reduce the intensity of it. Set that to 10. So this is all regular volumetric fog, and then ground fog is down here. Reset this back down to 70, maybe 80. So now it's a slightly bit higher. It's not touching the ground completely. And then changing this value here. If I set it to 0, it will be touching the ground at the same height, but you can see the separation much more obvious between the two. Wherever that line is, that's where it's like ground fog terminates and the next fog starts. But if you inject a little bit of the ground fog height noise, the two separations become a little bit less obvious and more noisy, kind of like that. So just something to keep in mind as you're like tweaking your thing, because I personally like to visualize the two of them separated first, know where my boundaries are in terms of the height of the level, because with each environment that's different. For some environments you're working with like really low to the ground fog, barely noticeable, so you would want to visualize it first before anything else. Am I coming through still? Let me check my stream just to make sure nothing broke on the back end. Is anyone there? Let me open up the chat window. Let's see. How do we see analytics for the live stream? Analytics, concurrent viewers, views, I see. Awesome. Okay, so we still have people. Awesome. If you guys are still here, let me know. Anyway, so let's, now that we have the visualization of the two different fogs, let's separate them out. So now I'm going to, awesome, still here. Cool, cool. So just going to drop this height to a number like 5. So the separation is not that hard. And then increase this to make the two start blending a little bit. Or is there a mannequin for reference? Where did he go? Right here. So I want to make sure that this ground fog is like this super low to the ground, not higher than your waist height, which I think this is good height. And then once you're done, you're set, you're good with it, and you don't want to make it too obvious, you just set the hardness back to 0. And that ground fog will just completely vanish, and it'll become pretty subtle, but you could always increase it if you want it to show up again. So this is obviously too strong. Also remember that our overall fog noise intensity set to 252. So obviously you don't want your entire sky to be filled up with noise like that. So, and also the scale is pretty small, so let's actually make the scale big first. So that part is larger. That will also make the ground fog larger. So something to keep in mind. Let's set the height to something like that. Drop the hardness back down so the edges are not too sharp. 0.5, 0.2, 0.1. Yeah, so it just like comes and goes. And then drop the intensity as you have tweaked that one now. So 150 is good. Something like that. Then we can obviously like tweak it once the forest comes in play, but just to get you in the mood as you're starting out. And then the other thing you could do is also reduce the intensity a bit more to have the sky not be super busy, because we will be adding those easy fog type of 2D card fogs as well. So you just want this to be a supplementary fog that's moving, that's all. Like its only job is to have some kind of an animation. The only thing to keep in mind is also the material on this thing. If I go this way, you can see it becomes like dark and like changes its opacity very strongly. Is because right now the sunlight is what's deciding the lighting of this. So as you go against it, it becomes black. When it changes the shape, the normal face is the other way again. So that's why you're seeing it going from gray to white to black constantly. But this is supposed to be a very subtle effect, so I wouldn't really go too far with the... Let's see if a smaller number gives better results. I wouldn't go too far with the overall opacity of it. Let's do 50. 4,000. Something like that. So we have something moving. 2,000 was good. Alright. So let's place Manny here where our character's supposed to be. And then add another one where the other character is supposed to be. So we have the coordinates for the hunter. Right here. So another quick tip, if you ever wanted to copy paste the values of one object and give it to the other one quickly, what you can do is select the first one. So I want this copy of the mannequin to move over where the cube is here. So I'll select the cube first, then shift right click the location, and then select the second Manny that we duplicated and shift left click, and that will quickly paste the values in here. So it's pretty good instead of like moving it by hand and trying to get it here. Cool. And then again, remember, because we duplicated him, you don't want him in the wrong level LCAM. So I'm gonna move him to a new level and call it characters. Browse. Finding content browser. Control Shift S. New level L underscore characters. Save. And then add that in here. So anytime you have characters, they can go in here, move selected actors. Cool. So now we have the rough relationship between the two in terms of the population. So now we can go back into our camera, find the second guy, click on him. Where is he? Over there. So now we know the direction of the population, so we know which side we are making the forest. We're not building it anywhere. So now you can have like 2 points essentially of interest. So the next thing we will do is create a new level for the trees. It's called, we will change the naming and the things that are in the levels as we keep going forward. But for now, trees is where we will add all of our stuff. Until before that, actually, let's also sort our outliner. Always keep naming things to keep them simple. So we can say characters, and the Manny goes in there. UDS needs to go into lighting, so add another one called lighting, and add ultra dynamic sky to that. So now you have your overall outliner cleaned up. Camera needs to go in one called cameras. All right, so now time to start populating. So now what I'm gonna do is find all my meshes, start dragging them in. Sci-fi jungle. Let's see what blueprints they have, because sometimes these environments come with blueprints. It's better to drag blueprints in instead of dragging actual meshes. So this says environmental. There's some fog. Let's see. What stuff do they have here? Whoa, that's a long blueprint. Oh, I see. It goes this way. So these are some fog cards, I guess this guy made. Oh, we're not gonna need that because we have the easy fog, which is nicer. There's one called near fog. Let's see. Yeah, it's just fog cards. What else does he have? Water. BP jungle water. Interesting. That's cool. He's got a water surface with some lily pads in there. as you move them, the transform changes, which makes the overall change with the spawning of the assets. So as the assets change, it's easier to quickly make different kinds of iterations. But in our case, I mean, once we start making ponds, maybe that'll be necessary just to show kind of a marshy kind of an environment. Let's go into the details, see what we have. Water scale, that's cool. Scatter density. I see. Select this again, culling distance, what kind of meshes we're scattering, all the lily pads, and then the scale. So it's a nice little blueprint. If I make it 10 and then move this. So while this is a nice way of adding some kind of water like surface, what I did I'll show for Luminara to add. So one of the shots, hello, hey Hirsch, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. Let me show you guys what shot I'm talking about. I feel like this is becoming like an unofficial breakdown of the Luminara thing, but I'll show you guys what I mean. This shot right here, if I had to make like all the ponds and like all the water surfaces that you see here on the ground by hand or through landscape, this would take forever. The way your brain quickly picks up on this, the fact that it's water, it is obviously through the reflection of it. So what I did, instead of, same thing with the inside, when it flies in, you'll see a little bit of like water puddles and whatnot on the ground down there. So what I did in order to quickly do this, instead of doing this by hand, is just this. So you go into your Quixel bridge. I hope I'm logged in. I'm good. I'm good too, Harsh. Just doing a late night stream, building some forests in Unreal Engine. Of course, I'm not signed in to Quixel Bridge. Sign in. With email. Did you export it AOV for the Unreal renders? For the Luminar stuff? For Nuke. For which project though? Oh, I got a OTP. You talking about the Luminar project, Harsh? Sorry, I'm just logging into my Quixel bridge. Yes. No, I didn't render any AOVs out. You could render like cryptomats. To be honest, that's the only useful one from Unreal. Unreal has a bunch of AOVs, but they're all pretty shitty, honestly. They're not like Arnold or anything. Yeah. So I personally wouldn't even. It's just to me, the bigger resource right now is disk space. And when I render these projects, I don't want like gigabytes and gigabytes of space just wasted for renders that then just sits there. So that's why I don't even render cryptomats, because I know like I'm trying to get my look the most I can in Engine. But yeah, you can render cryptomats. The biggest thing is when you're rendering anything out of Unreal Engine in the EXR like settings, like details, change the compression to DWA, like DWAA instead of zip, and that makes a huge difference in terms of space. Like before, you'll have like one EXR file will be like 1.4 MB, which might be nothing, but when you have like tons of shot with like hundreds of frames, like your overall renders will be like so many, like gigabytes. But if you change it to DWAA, let me show you guys so you can actually see what I mean. So let's open up a level sequence. Any level sequence would do. Level sequence. All right. I'm just opening a random one that's not connected to anything, but the hello, greetings from Nigeria. Oh wow. Hello, hello. What time is it there? So if you go into your render settings here, oops, this is the default one. We need the movie render queue. Oh, please tell me if we have movie render queue enabled. Of course we don't. All right, let's open up plugins and enable plugins here. Plugins and enable movie render queue. Right here. So if you wanted to render out crypto, you have to keep in mind you have to enable the additional render passes. Without this, you won't be able to render object IDs, which is crypto. So you have to check yes. Once the two things are done, you will have to restart. So let's do that. Hopefully everything comes back as is. Give it a second while it loads. 5:33 a.m. Oh my god. Why are you up? Did you wake up or are you still up from late night work sessions? Akpe. How do you say your name? Akpe? I hope I am not butchering it. My name is pretty long too. That's why I had to shorten it to Indy. Most people don't or can't say Indrajit. Or my full name is actually Indrajit Singh Sisodia. Not Singh Sisodia, which has been the story of my life where people always mispronounce and think I'm Punjabi, but I'm not. All right, so now that we have Unreal Engine open, let me quickly open up a level sequence to show what I was talking about before. So if you open up any level sequence, it's loading in the background. Sorry, it's just opening in the background. There we go. So now that we have movie render queue right here, so if you open a movie render queue and then click on config, you don't want to render in JPEGs, you don't want to render in PNGs, you want to render in EXRs because they're 16-bit, so you have a larger dynamic range. In here, it's set to PIS by default. Even from Nuke, if you're trying to render something, it's set to zip by default, which is opposite of PIS. So that's also available here, zip scanline 16 or 1. You could use that. I have been using that for a while. I switched to DWA a long time back and I haven't looked back. You could make renders in both of them. So you can render in DWAA and in zip for your project to see what it looks like. DWAA is a lossy compression, meaning you are losing some quality for size difference, but man, the file sizes, it is so hilariously small to a point where sometimes I'm rendering PNG files and they are larger than the DWAA EXR, even though the EXR is storing 16 bits of information and the PNG is only doing 8 bits. So I personally recommend anyone rendering EXRs out for any reason, pick this. Check it, render in zip and see what it looks like, but that's what I use. So there is that. Let's close all this, go back to our level, and you got the pronunciation right. I just woke up, started learning HTML and CSS. Wow, super cool. I wish I could wake up that early. I've always been like a night owl. Always get like full attention, but I really want to. I try to start really early in the day. Yeah, that's the best part. Um, I'm trying right now. If I go to sleep around 1:30, usually I sleep around, like before I used to, like when I'm doing projects and whatnot, I sleep around like 4:30. But now that like projects are done and I'm just chilling, I sleep slightly earlier, like one or two. Then I wake up naturally by like 8 or 8:30, 9, like a 6-7 hour sleep. Like I used to sleep longer. I got used to, because I was working more and more. I got used to getting the same amount of um, restoration, I guess, mentally, just feeling better within 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours. Anything less than six, and I'm cranky. But 6 is usually good for me. Um, Give me a second. Let me open up the level. This is level sequence. Turn on level overview. I'm also going to, actually, let me check if I can move that. I'm going to move the entire overview level into the levels folder. And that's going to be a little bit slow, but it might be useful because I will have all my levels in the same spot. So I'm doing this off screen on a second screen. And it's good to do all this before you actually start populating, because once you start populating levels, if you try to move a level, it'll either corrupt or it'll take forever to move. So now what I'm doing is basically this off screen. I have a favorites here with the levels and then all the levels in there. So now I'm just going to open up the overview level. Give it a second. I'll get some water. All right. Now that our level's open, what was the last thing we were doing? Actually making levels for the geometry. So, oh yeah, we're opening Quixel Bridge. What was I gonna look for in Bridge? I wanted to showcase something. I don't remember. If anyone remembers, you can remind me. I wanted to open Quixel Bridge to show something, but I don't know. Oh yeah, actually yes, I remember. Thank you. Because I had the video open in the other tab. So I was showing that how to create water bodies quickly, basically. How I created water bodies quickly for the Luminar thing that you saw. What I do is I go into Quixel and I search for terrain. Make sure you're searching for 3D objects, so you can also click on 3D assets, then search terrain. That way you're only getting 3D models. And here you'll see some of these gigantic sandstone or a couple more gigantic tundra. These are terrains that they've scanned with a drone. These are pretty useful for doing obviously aerial shots, but what I use it for is just quickly setting up these kind of water bodies that look natural enough while making sure that I'm not going in and hand placing every single pond and every piece of water. So let's say if this is the one I like, set it to nanite. I already downloaded it, so I'll just add to the level. And then in my content browser, I have the asset. Make sure I am in the right level before I add. So in our case, that is the landscape. It's part of the landscape. Make sure I save everything. Let's say we will not do the change, so skip. And okay, let's just check it out. And then drag and drop this massive landscape, which the moment as it drops in, you will realize that it actually is not as high res for actual work because it was captured with the drone. So give it a second as it loads the texture. Okay, let's turn the fog off a little so we can see it. So UDS, that's why it's, now that you have it set up, it's easy to turn it off by just going in and turn off render, global volumetric material, and it's off. So we have this giant tundra. Now, there is another chance you might be asking, why is it not loading textures? And there might be two reasons. Anytime you're troubleshooting textures like this, the first thing I do is make sure that is it a lighting issue or is it a texture issue or a shader issue. So in my case, anytime I want to troubleshoot when something is looking incorrect in Unreal, you just go in unlit. And if the textures appear here, that means it's not a texture or material issue. Or it could be a material issue still, but it's not a texture issue. There's nothing wrong with the texture file itself because I can see all the details here, but not in the lighting. So what I would also do is go into either lighting only to see the difference. Give it a second to compile. And then see what that looks. Usually this is more like an ambient occlusion pass. Then you can double check it with detail lighting only, which gives the diffuse lighting plus the normals. So that's when you can see the normal in here, but we are not seeing it on this one. So let's make sure that the asset correctly imported. So what I'd do is browse to the asset, Control Shift S to make sure everything is saved. Sometimes they don't compile shaders until you save. So fingers crossed once it opens. I'm gonna bring the window here. So this is good. You can see it comes through Nanite and we have Nanite enabled. So that is the very first thing to keep in mind. Nanite might not be enabled for the project itself. So if I wanted to quickly check, instead of detail lighting, I go into Nanite visualizations and go to here. You can see that it's set to triangles, but Nanite needs to render particular materials. So you have to make sure that that particular material, if it's not showing up while it's Nanite, the fact that it's not set to translucent and it's set to an opaque material. So that's how I backwards troubleshoot. So now that I know it's Nanite, let's go to the material and actually let me bring in the content browser. You right click here and you turn Nanite off to see if it actually shows up before you actually go in and troubleshoot, just to see that Nanite is the cause for it not showing up. So let's see. It's a pretty big piece, so it will take a second as it goes through and turns all the triangles back to normal triangles and not Nanite. So we turn that off, click save. And now if we go back to Nanite, triangles, okay, nothing shows up. That means Nanite is not the cause. Interesting. So there's a bit more things that we can go through and see if we can troubleshoot them. So we go back to unlit again. We have it here. It's not in lit, so we know that it's not a texture issue. It's not a nanite issue. Could it be a lighting issue? So what I would do is you would take ultra dynamic sky. Now because everything is in a level, you can turn the lighting level off. That should turn your ultra dynamic sky off. Oh, it's still in this level, so let's move it to the lighting level. Move and save everything. And once it moves, give it a second to save. And once it does, you turn that off and all the lighting in the scene is off. Now go back to your persistent level, create a new sunlight. So you can say light, directional light, yes. And there you can see immediately that everything shows up and it's looking good. So it wasn't the lighting in general, it's the fact that something to do with UDS is why it's not showing up. So let's try and troubleshoot that now. So we turn the lighting level back on, go to ultra dynamic sky, details. Let's try and see if we change this back to game real time and reduce the cloud coverage. So it was the cloud coverage, which is why it was showing up like that. So I'm going to change this back to cinematics offline and then increase the cloud cover to see what happens when it gets dark enough. So the albedo, how it responds to diffuse lighting versus specular lighting is what decides the difference here. On the terrain that we have here on the left, the reason why it looks good is because the diffuse is already set to high, and on top of that the spec is very rough and not glossy, which is why when the lighting drops and you increase the cloud coverage, it doesn't drop to super dark values instantly because it's still scattering light around in a rough sense of fashion. But in this case, you can see that the water bodies that are supposed to be reflective, they're retaining the overall level of brightness, but the rest of the albedo is not. So that's why what you need to do is open up the material and then boost the albedo itself instead of boosting the entire thing. So go into your material and then inside albedo, you got albedo brightness, and you can boost that to see if the values come back out. And if they don't, then go back to your roughness, max and min roughness. See if lowering this roughness. So you can see as I lowered the overall roughness, it started coming back. So obviously it was set to 1 by default. So if I set to 2.5, you'll see some of the stuff, but you'll only see it in the roughness channel. You're not going to see it in the albedo itself. So let's try and find if the material now property overrides, make sure it's opaque, just because of the nanite thing, that once we turn nanite on, that might also help. And then on top of that, let's make sure SSS we don't need, fuzz we don't need, spec, metallic, and then AO strength we don't need, 0 just in case. Enable SSS parameters you can disable, we don't need subsurface. Let's see if that helps. And then use adjusted maps. Usually you should leave it on, but let's see if that helps. So it's still a bit dark. Check that back on. That's I think the gamma adjustment that gets applied to the texture file itself. So Let's see if we go into albedo tint, try to tint it past the default values. So it's really clamping something on the back end. So what I would do is specular from albedo override. Well, technically you do want the lake, so you don't want to have that on. The fact that this brightness is not affecting it tells me that there's something broken on the back end of the material, because usually it's not supposed to have values that are this intense. Turn these off. Brightness should just be set to 1, contrast to 1, saturation to 1. Last one we don't need. It should work at this, which it does here, but because of the cloud shadows, once they come in, it breaks. So just for that one particular asset, what I'll do is just make a new material so that it responds to the cloud shadows slightly better. So I'm just going to go in here, create a material, m_tundra landscape. And that way I can control the parameters instead of going in and tweaking the Megascan space material, because if you were to tweak the Megascan space material, you have to make a copy of it. Otherwise, all your future materials that will be dependent on that will break as well. So let's do textures. Actually, instead of this, let's just bring in the textures that we have. Let's bring in this one, base color, and this way your material might also be a little bit lighter than the one that comes prepackaged with Megascans. So with the Megascans textures, this says DPRF. There's something to keep in mind, that means displacement and I believe roughness. So we can open up that texture to see inside how many channels are there that have the information. So you have the red, green, and then blue. Let's use the DPR. So R is roughness, goes into roughness, and then it should work. Save it, close it, and then let's see if we make a material instance out of it. And then add that to our mesh. Ta-da! Lighting. So it's something on the Megascans material itself that broke on the back end. But now we can go back in and turn nanite on, because remember we turned it off. So turn nanite on. Another thing you could do is also turn on nanite for the landscape, which I'll probably do at the end of this because it will take a while to process. So let's hope and pray that we don't have to wait too long for this. There we go, save. So now, as I was saying, now that we have the Tundra landscape working, you can really use it to create water bodies much more quickly than having to do it by hand. The only thing to keep in mind, as I said, the thing is not meant for up close shots like this. It's very low res, supposed to be more for drone views. But in our case, we can always scale it if need be. And then just place it where our mannequin is supposed to be. So let's see, where's mannequin here? let's move this down. Actually, we also have snapping here, so we gotta turn that stuff off. Oops. Please don't crash. Please don't crash. I didn't save. Oh boy. Thankfully, the autosave, they've made it way better in Unreal Engine whenever things start to crash, because before it used to be so shitty. But now it's the other problem, which is it's autosaves so much when you like stop moving your mouse, you'll have a massive autosave folder on your drive. Hello, Sandy. How's it going? Thank you for joining. So turn off all your snapping. And then you can bring this down. Really chugging. Okay. Reset. How's it going, Sandy? What time is it? It's probably like in India. Time in India. 10:28. Day's getting started. Cool. All right. So now we have Manny. Let's find him. The other Manny. Make sure they're at the right height. Because I accidentally moved the landscape, so I want to make sure that it's where it's supposed to be. Then let's select this one and move it down. And you can see it, you can really start creating things from the camera's perspective instead of making things too far away. So when you start intersecting things like this, especially when it's nanite, it really handles intersections well. Before, if you used like LODs, the intersecting point becomes too obvious. But now you can create like water bodies kind of like that quickly using just the terrain landscape. Like even though like this stuff is supposed to be like massive kilometers wide, now you can use it to like create water bodies. So that's what I did for the Luminar stuff as well, because your eye picks up on the reflection of the water more. So when the camera is moving, you just feel like there's a bit of water bodies here and there. So let's make sure it's in the right level. Landscape. It's in here. So from here to that guy there, that's what we're building. That guy there is where the edge of the forest is. This area is supposed to be more grassy, so I'm just going to... You think landscape works well with VR? I personally have heard people optimizing things like crazy for VR, so I wouldn't really assume so. Maybe simpler landscapes would, but nowadays, I mean, I might say something and Unreal will literally come up with a version where everything works. Or for that matter, sometimes it doesn't work. You should look up a documentary. Let me see if I can find it. They're talking about the current state of Unreal Engine and how a lot of the games look great, but they don't play great. So, Unreal Engine. Where is it? It was this like breakdown study on the games that are being made with Unreal Engine that aren't good for... Yeah, it's called The Problem with Unreal Engine 5. You can look it up. It's a pretty good video essay. I was watching it, but anyways, yeah. So things might look good. They might say it might, but if it doesn't work well, I personally wouldn't recommend it. So to answer your question, I would probably use just static mesh instead of landscape. Landscapes are useful when you really have a massive area and you want the player to actually go all over the place, and you don't want to go through and handcraft every single piece like what I'm doing here. But in my case, I know that I'm going to be crafting a cinematic, and I don't really care about optimization. So in my case, it's fine to put in these really heavy meshes, but landscape helps that by being a bit more efficient with the loading and unloading of the worlds, so to speak. So let's see, where is our guy? So you can always like rotate it, scale it. And now something else to keep in mind while I was working with the Luminar stuff, another thing that I noticed is when you're using assets like this, they might have like a really sharp edge like what you see here, which might not be good when you're trying to bash assets together like this. Like you don't want that edge to show up. You do want all of this in between details to show up, and you don't want the edge to show up. More often than not, they will make assets where the edge naturally tapers off downwards like that, so you're able to like intersect the geometries better. But if it doesn't, what you can do is go into the modeling tools. Let's say before we do, so it doesn't crash, you can go into the modeling tools and use Unreal's native sculpting tool, which is actually pretty good. I highly recommend trying it out, because that's what I did for a bunch of the Luminar stuff. So if you go into modeling, please forgive me because I haven't used this mode for a while, but if you go to deform, so you have a vertex sculpt here. So right now you can see the edges are a bit sharp. So what I can do is, let's see if it's this one. You can paint directly onto this onto the mesh and save it, and I believe it won't affect the original mesh that you're working with. Yeah, so now you have your little preview brush here and where you're painting, and the settings here on the left: size, flow, and then the value that you're going to be painting with, the strength. So what I would do is start painting. So that raises. If you hold control, you'll paint inverted on the other side, so it's all going down like that. So that's what I would usually do with meshes like this, where I don't want the edges to show up. I'll just set the strength of the brush to like something low, like 0.05, and then control paint it just in little chunks here and there. And that way I create like that natural unevenness. And then accept. And now give it a second, because it will save all of that. And with bigger meshes, it becomes even more denser, especially if they're not nanite. So let's give it a second to process. There's a lot of this with Unreal Engine, I feel like. Just a lot of clicking and waiting for things to happen. And then browse. Did I not hit save? What? What happened? I literally saved it. Weird. Alright, let's try again. I'll just do a bit this time, not too much. That should have saved. It saves as a separate asset too, so you're not overwriting the original mesh, which is nice. It saves in your geometry folder. So let's see. Control. Oh, I see. We did something else instead. Interesting. I don't know what's going on. Okay, let's cancel. And undo one more time. Undo. I have literally painted this exact same mesh before. Is that the same one? Browse. Tundra landscape. Yeah, I guess I added all these vertexes. But what? Let's try smoothing them out. So same thing like the default sculpt, but just for smoothing. Let's go to... Oh, I see. It already applies smoothing instead of applying it as a brush. That's nice. So let's hit accept. Hopefully that fixes all those crazy triangles that we had. Reopen. Let's see. Let's try reopening. Oh man, I had like nice details in there, and now they're all smoothed out. Okay, well, we're back to that at least. Let's save. Let's try that again. Vertex sculpt. I'm pretty sure it's not dynamic sculpt, because I think dynamic sculpt adds new vertexes as you're painting. Let's see if it works this time. Vertex sculpt. It's just that. It's as simple as that. You go to vertex sculpt. Alright. Hit backface. Allow the brush to hit the back side of the mesh. Maybe turn that off. And then smooth, angle, symmetry, strength, shift. Oh yeah, you can also, as you're painting, like regular to lift and then control to dip, you can also do shift to then smooth it out after. Preserve UV flow. Sure. Wireframe. Sure. Material diffuse. Okay, wireframe's crazy on this one. Alright, let's see if we can do it this time. Oh, I see. It probably went past and started inverting itself. That's why it got all messy. So as I'm pushing this, see some of these vertexes are doing crazy. So it's better to smooth them too as you're going around and pushing them. So let's hit them down and then smooth them out. And then smooth it out. That's why it wasn't working. And then smooth it out with shift. Shift left click. Yeah, I know. They should just stop, but I mean, it makes sense too. You're still like pushing the vertexes past their final point, so they will invert themselves. Sorry. They will invert themselves. And that's why it was showing up like that. But it should still show the edges correctly. Like you can see them dip down now. So now that I've hit accept, it should save it. And the new mesh should have those dents. Because I did that for the luminar. I was adding this castle wall and I wanted the, yeah, see? For some reason, it does that, but kind of. Like it did do it, but not completely. Like I painted all of this down and it's still here. Yeah, it's definitely a bug of some kind. So I painted all that castle wall down and made it like intersect the ground, but the ground wasn't coming up at the same angle that the castle wall was coming up on. So I used this exact method to paint all that geometry in a way where you could like tweak it and not have to worry about it. All right, so let's get this way. Now we're here towards where the guy is supposed to be. The other reason for adding this, obviously, other than the uneven breakup and the water body that you get with it for free, maybe it's a lattice. What do you mean, maybe it's a lattice? Oh, like I used the lattice deform? No, I remember like I specifically like painted a ditch area on this exact Iceland tundra asset. And it looks great. I wish I could open it, but that level is crazy heavy right now. If I try to open, it's gonna crash. But it worked perfectly, but for now, for some reason, it wants to act up. You can apply to modify the edges. Yeah, true. That's another way to get just the edges in. You could use a lattice deformer. Good tip, good tip. All right. Where is our first mannequin? Okay. All right, let's get some forest in here since we're doing forest, obviously. So let's open up the assets that we opened in the very beginning. For those of you that joined us after, we have a bunch of packs that I grabbed to build this kind of a look that we're going for. Very moody forest with twisted trees. So we are going to go in sci-fi jungle. Oh yeah, we were looking at blueprints and we saw the water blueprint and that's why we got distracted. But that was how we add water. Now let's see for scatter. What all do we have? Jungle bushes. So if I open up the layout, there we go. I'm just going to drag that blueprint into our scene. Environment, blueprints. I'm just doing this off screen on the second screen. Scatter, exterior, jungle, blueprint, large. Let's see. So one of those scatter density. That's cool. That's cool. Minimum scale. Can I just scale this then? Oh wow, that's cool. They increase the density after. Does it project down completely? Oh, I see where the two of them intersect. So you could do something like this. That's nice, but this I feel like it's the old school way of doing it. Now with PCG, you could just project points onto the landscape, so you don't have to do this by hand. But that's cool. They got a bunch of these type of blueprints for scattering. Then they got their space. We don't need that because the clouds are gonna break. Okay, and then splines. Okay, it's better to, in this case, just bring in the geometries for the plants. They have them as foliage, which is perfect because we can now switch to foliage mode. Find where we're painting here to there, and then open up our foliage. And then add all of this. Headed to bed now. Thanks again for streaming that. Awesome. Thank you, Tropical. I really appreciate it. We'll try and do more of these more often and keep them at a particular time and schedule. I'm trying to still figure that out, but thank you for joining. We'll see you in the next one. Level instances, nature. Sorry, let me just bring it here so you can see what I'm doing. So he's got these ready to go blueprints that have the cliffs and the forest inside of them. I might have to switch to selection mode. Whoa, that is pretty large. This might be good for like a final backdrop, so it blocks your view towards the end, but as of now we don't really need it because it's too massive. It's a waste of resources. What else we got? Structure, jungle. Yeah, these are too massive. Let's just bring in our foliage instead. Paint by hand. So we go to foliage, jungle. It's blueprint type. Actor foliage. Might have to save it, but these should be saved. Let's see, we can just use this. Because it's got the movement and everything, and the other ones inside of the main one, so that's a good thing to have actually. But their type is blueprint class instead of foliage, so that means we have to make one. Yeah, these are pretty cool. Alright, let's just make them. Okay, actor foliage. Then it's going to ask you where you want to save it. Let's say geometry, foliage. Call this one BPP broadleaf. F for foliage, BPP broadleaf. And then inside of this, we should be able to add our actor. Perfect. Make sure we can paint it. Let's try painting. Where is the brush? Brush size. Is that a bug? Let's enable. Maybe the brush shows up after enabling. There we go. We got our tree. We got our brush. Whoa. That is a big boy tree. Cool. Let's go further away. Let's erase that guy. Let's add all of our foliage before we do anything else. Actor foliage. Take that name. Change the end part of it to broadleaf 2. Select and then add this. Enable. Save. Yeah, this is a bit of a tedious process just to set all of the foliage up, but once it is on, we're gonna be good. Foliage 3, call this hollow leaf 1. Save. Let's just make all of them first. Hollow leaf 2. And then pine 1 and pine 2. Pine 1. And then pine 2. Then trunk large and trunk large 2. Trunk large 1. And then trunk large 2. Cool. So let's now assign. This goes here. This goes here. This one is pine. Pine. Sometimes when you buy these packs, like foliage will already be made for you, so it might be useful to use that instead of making one like this from scratch. But no worries, we have it all set up now. So let's turn them all on. Now it's gonna be crazy heavy, so let's do very low paint density. Just one click. The hopes that it doesn't crash. Okay, maybe that was too little. 0.5. Okay. Oh, we're on erase, that's why. Okay, paint. 0.1. Oh, I knew it immediately. Okay, that is pretty big. And the leaves are pretty massive too. Might have to scale it down. So let's turn all of these off first. Just work with this guy. Now, sometimes when you have these assets, you could also click the select. Holy shit, can you guys hear me? Is anybody there? Oh, echo. Is anyone there? Please comment. This is my first time that a stream crashed mid-stream, like the entire thing. My whole PC just froze up, GPU crash. And I came back and it's still going, which is crazy. If this like blends into the existing stream, like after I'm done, when I save the video and it becomes like one single video without interruptions, that'll be epic. I thought I lost everything, including the video that I can then like turn on demand for anyone else to watch later. But if anybody is there and you're still receiving the signal, please comment. I do see four viewers. Yeah, if you're there, please tell us. Because I can't seem to hear the music, so I am not sure if everything is back up and running. I'm still going to try and open the scene just in case. But if anybody's there and you can hear it, please say something in the chat. Thank you. That's what happens. I feel like given the fact that Unreal Engine is so GPU demanding, when you're streaming and you're working with crazy file sizes like this, and VRAM sizes, I feel like it's better to have a separate streaming PC. So you're streaming separately, and if your main PC crashes, you can just restart and it doesn't affect the first one. You can still keep talking and keep doing your thing. But let's see. Again, if anyone can still receive this, please let me know. I crashed the whole stream and came back, so I am not sure if I'm in the same session / stream or if it's a different one. I will be probably ending it in like the next 20 minutes, but I just wanted to see if we could get some trees in there. Definitely not painting foliage. That's what the lesson I learned. Indy, the mic is very low now. How about now? Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Can you hear me, Simon? Is this better? I was talking a little bit further away. For some reason, I can't even hear the... Oh, I hear it now. Yay. It works. Why are you up this late, Simon? What are you working on? For those of you who might watch this later, Simon is a work colleague and a super talented artist. You should check out his profile. Simon Rizzo. I'll open it on screen for you. Go watch his work. He's super, super cool. Best sculptor in the world. He sculpted a lot of cool stuff for the Luminara project. You can watch the whole thing. Simon, let me know whenever you hear this, if the background music is too loud or not. It's hard to gauge. Alright, so we are back, and we've learned a lesson to not paint foliage for now. So I'm just going to hand place these assets for now. Good stuff, my man. Good stuff. Working away. Right. I'm actually happy that I have company for these night sessions. That's good. All right. Let's build this forest. So we come back onto the sci-fi jungle. Go to blueprints, environment, and bring our blueprints in. Oh, all the foliage didn't even save either. Interesting. Okay. No worries. No worries. We'll do it by hand. Alright. So let's get some composition in. Let's select our camera. It would be good to have like one of these trees define the entire shape of the canopy, more or less. And then have smaller ones that are surrounded in there. That would be cool. Something like that. Okay, and these ones are too big. I want to have that trunk one to be the biggest, so I'm probably going to scale to much smaller. So that this looks like... So you don't want to scale the people, because the scale for the mannequin should be your base, but it's better to scale other things up based on that. Let's set 2.5 then. And then if that is 0.5, then you can make this bigger, C2. And then don't worry about the fact that the sunlight's not poking through, because what I did for the Luminara scene, you can always add like custom spotlights, but make them really large and hazy looking to make it feel like it's like sunlight poking through a certain area. All right. Let's get some of these weird alien looking ones. Oh yeah, another pro tip. I can't hear any BG music. Okay. It's probably because I've dialed it too far low.
I increased it a tiny bit. Let me know if you hear a little bit, because I don't want to blast it too much in my ears. But I can control the two separately, so hopefully you should hear something. And if it's still low, tell me. I can increase it a little bit more. Trying to play like some general ambient drone music type sounds for focus that are also don't have copyright problems with streaming. Now is good. Cool. All right. Is my video in sync with my audio, Simon? Because I feel like you're responding fast enough how it should be, but I'm watching the video on the thing and I feel like there's a lag. So I'm looking at the camera right now and I'm talking directly into the camera. Tell me if the audio and the video are synced up. Like if you can see me talk at the same time as the video. Okay, perfect. Cool. Alright, so back to setting up the foliage. Something to keep in mind whenever you're trying to do similar type of tree species is how trees grow in real life, which is they usually cluster up. So the same type of trees will be in the same vicinity. So in this case, if I'm doing these red fungus looking ones, I would try to keep a bunch of them similar looking ones nearby, which is suggests that they grew as a clump. Another big thing for set, anytime you're doing any kind of set design or any kind of environment build in Unreal, this rotation is always just I hate this gizmo. It's just like I want to rotate it, but I want to just rotate on all three axes at the same time. Like I have to do this, then this, then this. It's too much. So pro tip, always go, this is something I do with every project, go to your project settings. It might be under engine settings. Let's see. In here, search for arc ball. It's not here. Great. Change to open engine settings instead. World settings. No, not world settings. Engine preferences. And search arc ball. And enable. This turns on the Maya type arc ball, which is so much useful. So now when you go in and you pick the middle area, you should see this faint outline of an arc ball, and you can just do this and it's so much easier. Everything looks fine. Alright, cool. Alright, so let's get back to set design. So what I also like doing is just putting all the instances of everything in the beginning together, so I know what I have to play with. Then I don't have to go to the content browser every time, and we're just gonna be building with this then. Also, rotating assets sometimes 90 degrees just changes the look entirely, so something to keep in mind. You might want to do if you want to have, like, let's say something sticking out through the fog or something. With the same asset, it will look slightly different. Maybe continuing the same shape is kind of cool too. You can use the exact same asset or a copy of the asset, but continue the flow of the thing to make it look like this tree was like much larger than it actually is. obviously, well, we can't rotate it like that now because it has vines on it, so it won't work. But you still rotate it this way. So it's coming together. Slowly start building the look of it, the foliage. Let's see what else we have to play with other than these. Go to models, nature, foliage. We got the trees, we got the bushes, we got the rocks. Just the trunk. This might be useful. Doesn't have those other things. So it just makes it look like this big, thick cluster of trees that are crazy. And then having other trees be like higher up also makes it feel like everything is gargantuan. There's like trees growing up here on top of trees. Now this might also be a good time because I'm planning on doing a drone shot in the beginning as an establisher to establish the camera and the direction of the flight. So you're populating, like right now I was adding that tree up there, which looks great from this angle, but then if I'll like go up there, it'll kind of look funky. So if you have your second camera already set up, it's better to do that with a rough idea. It doesn't have to be exact, so I'm just going to duplicate this and go into that camera and then do whatever drone shot I was thinking of. Like all these big ass ferns will have to get scaled down then to make this size of this tree feel much larger. So for this camera I am going to do this. I'm going to change the camera's lens because it's supposed to be a drone-like establisher, so it doesn't have to be 50mm. Let's do 28. So since this is anamorphic, you have to multiply it by 2 to get to that level. So 56 is actually 28 if it's set to anamorphic, which is kinda cool, I guess. But yeah, you need to know which direction you're flying in. Also, if you're flying in this way or not, because if you want to showcase the vastness of the whole thing, you might have to then go and populate all the forests everywhere. So in this case, I'm just gonna do like a flyover like this because the focus is the character that's standing out in the clearing where the gizmo is. And so we're flying over from the forest, and then there'll be a shot of her with some sound, and the character will turn towards the forest and react. So there'll be shots of the character like looking, but obviously turned 180 towards the camera, looking this way, and then a bullet's gonna come, hit the character in the leg, and then things happen. So that other character's gonna come from that side. So I think this angle we got locked. We're pretty good with that. Let's look into the drone camera angle. if we are able to populate this back area, we might have a larger fly through. Now the bigger problem with this is the fact that for the front camera we are going to add like fog clouds and whatnot that works from this angle, but then if we're gonna fly from the 180-degree opposite angle this way, all those fog clouds and everything else will break and it'll look 2D and flat. So might have to prep this slightly differently. So let's see what we can do. 30, 60. Is 48. Yeah, I want to pick a good camera angle that works both ways. Maybe if the drone comes in this way and then dives down to fly this way. No, but then you'll still cut through all those 2D fog cards. What if the drone comes in from this way? And then lands back down this way. That might be something. Alright, let's populate from this perspective then. In that case, this guy has to go, or at least be smaller. Just putting like some larger identifying ones. The smaller stuff will just be foliage painted on top of this mesh, so you don't have to scatter all of it by hand, essentially. I like doing it for now because I tried the foliage method and it just crashed the whole PC, so I don't want to risk that again. But yeah, otherwise I would just ideally do it that way. Let's see. We drop this one. We also have the evil trees that we need to use. Let's add them. See how it would look. Got the trees. Drag and drop them all. Oh yeah, the other thing why it's also crashing. Oh shit, I forgot. Also the fact that they're not all nanite, I believe. Might have to nanite them. Okay, they're nanite. Pretty good. Other than landscape, everything is nanite, which is good. I believe the landscape itself you can nanite too. Build data, enable nanite. Yeah, I'll probably do that off stream because it takes forever to build a nanite landscape. So for now it's good that these are enabled at least. So let's use these. So all of these are small. You might want to select them all. Scale them up. Get some dense foliage in there. 5 times the size. This will create some nice variations. But again, same thing, because they're dead. You don't want to add them randomly next to non-dead things. You want to add them where a lot of things are dead together. Where is my mannequin? Let's push him further back so we know the scale. Okay, this stuff is pretty small, actually. Let's make it larger compared to him. Let's make it 6, no, 7. Music's a bit too loud for me. Also, I want to really find like calm music at nighttime, not like rocking out so hard. If anyone knows any specific stream music, it's like ambient drone music, that'd be great to know. Because these are a bit too crazy. Like just Blade Runner vibes, you know? And that's the other thing with these type of trees. You don't want to have them become crazy visual clutter. I'm just spreading them around just to keep them in the level, but towards the end it'll probably look way more different than what it is now. Trying to make a path here with these inclined trees to make it direct your eyes a bit more. Oh yeah, to make sure they're all in the mesh level. Where is levels? Window levels. Select these and add them to a new level, actually, called L Geo Trees. Add that here. And then move all of these guys in here. Select all of these PPs, add them here. And then make sure they're all in here, turn them off. There's always one that gets left behind. And then this one, turn this on, move selected, turn that off. Everything is gone, just like that. So always work with levels. Alright, let's see what other trees we have. Where's the evil ones? Evil. And that's the thin ones. We don't want those, we want the big boys. Alright, let's add these, make sure we're at the right level again. Geo. Oops, sure. Oh my god, Unreal, come on, there we go. And then drag and drop. And pray to the Unreal gods it doesn't crash. Good, did it. Go to nanite, make sure everything is nanite. Beautiful. Let's get some of these spiky ones up front. Give it that super banyan tree like. There's a tree called banyan tree. Is that the official name? It's got these really dense branches. We call them banyan tree, but what is it called? Yeah, large fig tree native to the Indian subcontinent. Kind of looks like that. It's got these crazy dense branches, trunks, whatever you want to call them. They come down from the top, which is kind of like that. It's like there's a main tree, but there's a slightly off-colored, many more branches that come out of it. Let's keep it on this side. If anybody knows of any tool in Unreal that gives it Blender like controls, man, I would love to have it. Such a pain to move these things by Gizmo. Also, towards the end, you might want to color correct some of these to get them within the same range, to make it feel like they're all cohesive. You know how like this too dark? You still want to get it into that slightly greenish territory. Let's do that over here. So, global scale. They don't have any color multiplier. Let's multiply color. Multiply. I'm gonna skip this one. And then multiply this. I'll clock off, try to go. Alright, brother. Talk soon. I'll probably sleep too. What time is it? It's 2. Yeah, I'll be around like 10, 15, 30 minutes maybe, and then I'll head out too. It was good to see you, brother. Talk soon. Bye-bye. So let's change the color on this. make it slightly greenish. Call this, oops, call this albedo tint, and then save. And now you should have an option to change the color a tiny bit to match the rest of the trees. Yes. There we go. Albedo tint. Add that slight greenish yellow tone. Just with that. Hope. It says branches. Let's see what changed. It's got branches and spikes. What are we changing the color of? Let's make it crazy. I see. So the branches are the thin ones. Those could be like yellowy almost. Okay, the reflection's too strong on this, so metallic override, no metallic. You're not a metal. Normal is good at 1. Roughness. I don't know if the roughness is set up correctly, so we gotta set that up. Let's see the shader. So we got a texture coordinate, we got a tiling, which is good. We got a base, albedo value, multiply, tint, metallic override. Got this map that has ORM. O goes into a bit occlusion, R goes into roughness. Technically, this is not how you want to plug roughness, where there's a value from a map and then the other value is 0 and then you're doing alpha through an override. You want to do it the other way around, which is the map drives the actual lerp's alpha, and then the roughness override goes in to these. So they have 2 values. One, you should call it roughness max, and then the other one should be roughness min. This way the user can decide what the lowest and the highest roughness can be that is allowed, and only make those changes in the area that is defined by the map. So this is how you want to set it up. Spec is 0.5, that's good. Metallic, I don't know if you want to override, honestly it's a tree. But since you have ORM, you do the same thing. Let's just make a metallic version of the same thing. Technically, you don't have to. In metallic maps, something is either metallic or it's not. There's no in between. So let's call this metallic max and metallic min. 0 goes here, 1 goes here, and then ORM goes here. So that's how you want to set that up. Same thing with this. Is good. Roughness min and max. And then normal, you want to do this, which is correct. Normal intensity either goes from pure blue to this one. So now if we save, we should be able to control how shiny those branches are. We didn't get a lot of actual layout done in the stream, but there'll be more of the actual build in the next one. Now that we have this on the lock, so go to min. Roughness is 0, max is, let's say, 1. So this becomes really rough, and then the 0 part is shiny, so you're seeing areas like this, but you don't want it to be shiny, so you can do like 0.3, and now it suddenly starts looking more diffuse. So even though it might be like a slimy tree, you don't want it to be like mirror like finish. So something like this would be nice, and then you can go in and boost the value of the diffuse to make it blend the rest of the trees. So the branches can be that, and then the spikes, let's make them do the same. Spikes, and open that one up. It's the exact same one, so it's perfect. Good job, whoever made it. And in here now metallic is 0 to 1, and base multiply is 3.9. Let's set it to, okay, sure, 4. Then let's tint this guy now to the greenish tones, but just a tiny bit, not too much. This is a bit too much now. So let's make it darker. And then in this case too, roughness min is good and roughness max is 1. Let's have the minimum be 0.3. That'll make everything flatter. And then I don't know if this is tiling correctly. I hope it's not a UDIM map, because for that you have to enable virtual texturing if you were to use things with UDIMs, and by default it is off, so something to keep in mind. To quickly check if it's something is a UDIM or not, just open the shader to then open the texture, go to browse, and if it's a single map it will just be 4K by 4K. That's good. If you want to know if it's a UDIM tile, you can hover on top and you'll see multiple textures listed. Where it says like source file location is only like 1 file, it'll probably go to like 3 files or 4 files if it's a UDIM. So turns out it's not a UDIM, it's just how they textured, I guess. I still feel it's incorrect. Is there tiling happening in this? No. Let's look at the main material one more time quickly. That texture coordinate goes into all the textures, which is also correct. Coordinate index, sometimes you want to change this and see if it fixes texturing issues. Set this to 1. Hit save, doesn't work, or make it worse. Because it's hard to tell when other people do the texturing. Yeah, that's obviously not right. 2. Let's try. Sometimes it's not the first UV channel. Some assets are in other UV channels, but in our case that makes it worse, so 0 it is. Another thing you could do is actually to look at the UVs. Open this up in static mesh editor, and then in here you can go in and look at the UVs. UV channel 0. So it looks like it has the UV map in it. What about UV1? Usually it should not have anything. So looks like they UV'd it using automatic UV, which is why you're getting those patches, which is interesting. It should be in the first set of UVs which we have correctly picked here. Well, I guess we'll just use the tree a little sparingly. The far away doesn't show up as much, but would have been nice to have the correct UVs and everything set up. Anyways, so let's save all our stuff and open up the material again. So that's the spikes. If we boost this, it changes the tree's look. And then make it a little less green and a bit more whitish yellow. So with that, let's duplicate this around. All right. This area is looking nice and dense now. Anytime you need like this level of crazy, just realism type details, I'll just insert this to make it look like it has a lot of sub branches, so to speak. Always rotate them too. A lot of the times the assets are always like straight pointing up. In real life, there's always like things going in all directions. So we will select, where's the other trees? The broadleaf. We only got one broadleaf. Let's bring in the other one. Broadleaf 1. Let's bring in broadleaf 2. Set this to 0.5. Broadleaf 2. Broadleaf 1. Actually, let's get the deciduous pine ones because you could make them stick out like their canopy at the top. So have it not be as tall, so turn this off. Set this to 0.2. This way it's more bush-like. Little bits of green like sticking out makes it look nice and real, so not all the branches are like completely dead, so to speak. They're more marshy. I might also tone the color on these guys. They're a bit too intense. Let's duplicate this. Make it come out of the tree. That'll be cool. You don't want that sticking out, so let's make that smaller. 0.5. I've heard the 3D Connection mouse from the company 3D Connection, I think it's called. It's really good with their Unreal plugin. I've heard that. I haven't tried it for moving things around in the viewport, because I feel like 99% of the time in Unreal Engine just goes doing that, just like moving things to the location you like them to. It's just too time consuming with the current gizmo thing that we have. So I was thinking maybe that might be something cool to look into. Just trying to make this area more fungusy without having the trees branches sticking out too prominently. But it's hard. Let's just find the actual asset instead of using the blueprint. Go to models. And then nature, foliage, shrooms. That's cool. Too small. Oh, glowing mushrooms. Will be a good light source. These mushrooms are too tiny. Let's find the whole tree. This guy, stick it in. And scale it down. Yeah, stuff like that, and then just duplicate, rotate, stretch a little, break up the look, add some color. I think it's coming together. Once the fog comes in, the back area is all populated, so that whole thing I'm thinking it's gonna be more PCG or foliage. We'll see which one is easier to populate. This area here, like the back area, and then the front wall, because we know a camera is gonna be this way looking at it, then it makes sense to have the front wall be more obvious. But the back can be more forest-like, and same thing with the side here. Not that art directed, so to speak. We do have the fog cards from Easy Fog that I'm sure everyone is aware. It's a really cool tool from William Fauché. I'm sorry, William, butchered your name, last name. But William made this, and essentially it's very simple. What it is a card blueprint, some advanced functionalities that lets you swap textures out. It's kind of cool. And lets you add these fog cards that can move in a certain direction or animate, and then the best part is you can use the camera depth node is what we have. Camera geometry fading distance, and use that by scaling up the card like a lot, and it creates a fake thing like that, where it's technically still a card, but a bit of a blue tinge to it, not make it so emissive. Maybe no, it's too dark. Okay, 0.1 emissive. So with fog, you don't want to make it too emissive, meaning it's always lit no matter what. You want it to be lighting only with the light, more or less. And a bit tinge Oh yeah, so anytime you have a transparent object like these fog cards in the way and you're trying to select something behind, you can press T to disable translucent selection. So it only selects things that are opaque. Let's push this card and then put it back. And then you can localize it in smaller areas too. But yeah, it'll be cool once we have all the pieces together. But that will be it for today. We did a really nice stream, pretty long, and the goal is to do it more frequently. So I'll be coming back on. Let's look at our calendar. Wednesday, 11th of June, from the same time, 10:30, for like 3 hours essentially, and then do it basically like that, maybe like at least 2 times a week live stream, maybe one on a weekend, we'll see. So we just moved into this area, so I still have a lot of things behind me that I have to declutter and get the house set up. But other than that, I'm trying to do more of these live streams, have more content that you guys can learn from, hopefully, and I just have fun. More people are around, just hanging out, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Just gonna save all of this, and to anyone who's still around, is anyone still around? Let's see. Let's go to the thing. Is anybody there? It says 8 concurrent viewers. Hello, 8 people watching. Please let me know you're there, 8 people. But yeah, I'll see all 8 of you and anyone else who watches this on demand next time. So until then, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully it'll get more engaging and more entertaining the longer we go, but that's the goal. We'll talk soon. I gotta go sleep, and bye bye. See you guys.